Hey guys, Jase Dussia here, JTA Innovations. It's the middle of September 2022 right now. A few weeks ago, we returned from the French Extreme Flight Championships, FXFC, and also the Extreme Flight Wings Over Europe event in Belgium that was put on by Aerobertics. I wanted to do a recap video going over some of the awesome experiences that we had over there, some of the learning experiences, and wanted to highlight some of the people who made it all possible, and just wanted to talk a little bit about it from a flying perspective, from a logistics perspective, and just kind of give a recap of the full 2 weeks of the trip. A lot of work went into it from a lot of different people. Like I said, great experience. Learned a lot, met a lot of awesome people, saw a lot of awesome flying, and wanted to highlight that in this video. So not sure how long this video is going to be. Might get drug on a little bit, but that's because there's a lot of details to be covered. So technically the journey of FXFC 2022 began in late of 2021 when I got an email from a gentleman named Sebastian Roger who lives in France. He was in communication with the event organizers for FXFC, and he simply wanted to reach out and invite me to the event and offer his help for logistics. And so I was definitely interested in that ever since I was a kid and started flying 3D and freestyle and watching freestyle flying on YouTube, on the internet. I wanted to go over to Europe and do a freestyle contest over there. So you know, I was extremely excited that maybe there's a possibility that I'd be able to do so. So of course I replied back and said that I was interested. After that, I wanted to reach out to a couple other people, knowing that the event was in France. And in August, I reached out to Bert from Aerobertics, located in Bruges, Belgium. So not too far away from where the event was taking place. And also I knew that the 2022 Wings Over Europe event was going to be taking place in August as well. So I dug up a little bit of the dates and found out that Wings Over Europe was the weekend before FXFC. So reach out to Bert, gave him the heads up that I got the invite and that I'd like to make it possible to attend FXFC. And also got in contact with Chris Hinton from Extreme Flight and the factory that produces the Extreme Flight models. And between those guys, we all agreed that we'd work towards getting some airframes ready for the event, and that it would be cool to attend both Wings Over Europe and FXFC. Now at this time in 2021, obviously there was still some travel restrictions, so we weren't 100% sure how it would work out, but we still went ahead with it. We wanted to get, you know, as many people over there as possible. My family wanted to attend. Chris from Extreme Flight wanted to attend, and a few other people here stateside obviously wanted to attend since it was going to be such a cool opportunity. It turned out to be that a lot of people weren't able to go just because the travel restrictions kind of freed up at the last minute. So because of costs and other plans in life, you know, it just kind of worked out to where the plan was going to be that I was just going to go over there, get there a few days before Wings Over Europe, get the plane set up, and fly at Wings Over Europe, and then head to FXFC. Now back to Sebastian, who lives in France, who lives near the site where FXFC was in Lyon. He was familiar with the area, familiar with some of the people running the event, so I kept close contact with him. Super nice guy. He gave me some suggestions for flights, hotels, apartments, etc., and also gave me some ideas for some tourism things before or after the contest if I was interested, and said that he would help out with that. So fast forward, spring of 2022, we've got the airplanes picked out that we want to fly at FXFC, the 104-inch laser and the 104-inch extra NG. The factory is prepping those. Huge shout out to Bear over there at the factory. Really made sure that those two specific airplanes were built to the highest standards possible. and in the long run it worked out perfectly. No issues structurally with the airframes. Hardly had to do any structural maintenance on them. No glue joints coming undone, no covering problems, so huge shout out to the factory for getting that taken care of. So in 2022 comes around, communicate with Bert a little bit, and graciously enough, he offered that I could take his van from Wings Over Europe to FXFC. So summer 2022 comes around, start to prep on some freestyle routines a little bit, spent a lot of work on that. From a flying perspective, I really didn't know what to expect. Obviously, I kind of knew some of the flying styles that I would see over there from some of the pilots, but with 39 total pilots, there's never really a guarantee of what you'll see with people coming over from all across the world, and also from different judges too that I haven't flown with yet in a previous contest. So from a routine perspective, I put together a couple of them, some similarities, some differences within them, and I hope that I'd be able to go over there and at the very least be able to adjust throughout the contest based on what I was seeing with the scoring. So spent a lot of time on routines. Fortunately, I have a 104-inch extra NG and 104-inch laser here, and here at the house practiced the routines a lot over the summer and got to the point to where I was fairly comfortable with them. Obviously with this is the first time that there was an uncertainty that I would be able to fly the routines the same over there, because the airframes were different. It wasn't my airplanes that I was going to be flying, and B, the conditions were going to be different field, different elevation, that sort of thing. So there's some uncertainties there, even though I felt pretty comfortable with how practice was going. With that being said, ended up being pretty darn comfortable with the airplanes that I flew at FXFC. Huge shout out to all the sponsors that made it possible to run the equipment that I'm used to, the DA120s, the MKS servos, Spectrum equipment, even brought over the B&E graphics packages that I use on the airframes, the Falcon props, you name it, we had it over there. So huge shout out to those guys who made it possible, Bert and the sponsors for coordinating, the Holy Smokes pumps, that's another one. I think the only thing that was different on the airframes were the batteries. That's just because, and the smoke oil, that's just because some things were pretty hard to access in Europe as compared to here stateside. So, but overall, the feel of the airframes pretty darn close. Not two airframes are going to be identical, but pretty darn close. And also huge thanks to John Gastel, who Bert reached out to help get the airframes prepped for setup at Wings Over Europe. So summer 2022 passes. I continue communication with Sebastian, super nice guy, not afraid to text back and forth every day about logistics, flight planning, transporting, that sort of thing. He helped out booking an apartment for me during FXFC, so that took a lot of stress out of that. So August comes around, it's after AirVenture Oshkosh. August comes around, we're practicing hard. There were some difficulties that came up with airframe assembly, and there was some uncertainty that we would be able to show up at Wings Over Europe, which would have been on a Wednesday or Thursday, and there's uncertainties that we'd be ready to go to start dialing the airplanes, doing the maiden flights, setup flights, and demo flights Friday and Saturday. So with that being said, it's literally the day before we leave, or day before I leave to go to fly into Belgium for Wings Over Europe, and some things happened to where the airframes were not able to be set up and dialed in before the event. And at this point, I'm thinking, well, I'd really like to take Wings Over Europe as an opportunity to dial in these airplanes. It's a great opportunity the weekend before the contest to get that uncertainty out of the way that I'd be uncomfortable with the airplanes. So I wanted to make sure that we stayed course with that. I didn't want to waste an event just spending the whole time dialing them in, building them, setting them up, and then not being able to fly at the event or do demos. And that's for several reasons, because Bert and Aerobertics put a lot of time into the event and helped out a lot to get me over there, so it'd be awesome to do some demos. And then B, like I just stated, it would be awesome to use it as an opportunity to get used to the airframes. So it's the day before I leave. I was gonna leave on a Monday morning at like 8 a.m. and arrive into Belgium on Tuesday morning. And it's Sunday night, Sunday evening. We're actually out at the field doing some last minute practice, and we find out that there's been some hiccups in the assembly and setup. I get a hold of Chris and Ben, tell them the situation, and huge shout out and thank you to Ben Fisher. He put aside all his plans that week, for the next 2 weeks for that matter, packed his bags, packed up some tools, spare equipment, other miscellaneous items that we may need, and booked a flight. This was Sunday evening. He booked a flight same time, Monday morning at around 8 a.m. and we both got into Brussels the same time Tuesday morning. So huge shout out to Ben, and put aside the next 2 weeks to come help out, to make sure that we had the manpower to put together these airframes, set them up, and have them ready to go to fly at Wings Over Europe. So we get into Belgium. We meet up with Bert from Aerobertics. Viken, who works at Aerobertics, picked us up from the airport. Got to the shop, spent the day at the shop, tinkered on some airframes a little bit that were going to be at Wings Over Europe. Not the FXFC planes, but some of the airplanes that Bert was going to bring. I built a JTA Innovations extra for display, and after a lot of traveling and a lot of hours being awake, we slept there in Bruges. Got up the next morning, took the Aerobertics van and headed 3 hours south to Bollingen, Belgium, where Wings Over Europe 2022 was held. And on the way there, we stopped at the Formula One circuit in Spa. Had to see that, being a big F1 fan. So that was cool to see. That was only a half-hour drive or so away from Wings Over Europe, so had to take that opportunity. So we got to Wings Over Europe. Beautiful facility, awesome. It's full-scale grass strip with a hangar. Great place to have the event. A few people started showing up there, and that evening we got the airframes from John from the Netherlands, and got the airframes, started to work on some small things. Thursday, this was Wednesday evening, Thursday morning comes around. Thursday morning, we get to the field really early, get back into the hangar, start working on the airframes a little bit. Thursday afternoon, we get the setup going, set up the servos, button a few things up Thursday night. Basically spent all day Thursday working on the airframes in the hangar there. Friday morning comes around, get back out there again super early, because our plan was to maiden the airframes. And the laser was the first one up. Got the laser ready to go, ran the engine on the ground, got the throttle settings going, got a base tune on it, went up and did the maiden flight. Easy, break in flight, get some airflow in the engine, varying throttle settings, that sort of thing, the normal procedure. Come in and land, it's super foggy, successful flight, get a few flights on that airframe, then move on to the NG. Now, although the density altitude is super high there, like over 3,000 feet, I still noticed that the airframes were a little down on power. Turns out that the fuel that we were running had a little too much oil in it, to say the least, so that was an easy fix. So Saturday morning, the main day for Wings Over Europe, as you'd say, the demo flying day, perfect weather, sunny, not too much wind. We get our own oil mixture in the airframes and go up and do some demos of the NG and laser. Had an awesome day, met some fantastic people at Wings Over Europe, saw some awesome old friends that I hadn't seen since the previous edition of Wings Over Europe in 2019. So great day Saturday, got the airframes fairly much dialed in, just a matter of getting used to them. Put on some demo flights, had a lot of fun with that. Great showing for Wings Over Europe. I think that event's going to grow pretty darn big in the future. A lot of people from all over Europe came around, and I think that facility is just perfect for it. A lot of different types of airplanes too, which is cool to see. So I can't wait for the next one because I think that one's just going to keep growing. So Saturday, we start to gather around some tools, some equipment, some parts that we weren't able to previously obtain at the event because the plan is to leave Sunday morning to drive to France for the FXFC. So we go get some fuel for both the van that we're taking and the airframes, pick up some smoke oil, some cleaner for the airframe, some tools, some glue, some miscellaneous parts, backup equipment, got a backup DA-120 from Bert, that sort of thing. It's Saturday evening, we're chilling out. Ben comes back from town to where he got some parts. Ben comes back and tells me that while we were out getting fuel earlier that day, that we accidentally put gasoline in the diesel van. So we kind of stressed out a little bit about that because we were probably a little over 12 hours just from leaving Belgium to go to France. So that was an ordeal, to say the least. But huge shout out to a couple of people. Huge shout out to Erwin Matthewson, who got a hold of a guy that would be able to rent a van. And then huge shout out to the guys who came up with the final solution. There was a guy there at the event that had a shop. They came in, put it on a hauler, took the van out, drained the gasoline, filled it back up with diesel, did a few other minor adjustments on the van. So blessing in disguise, as you'd say, before we head off to Lyon, France. Sunday morning comes around. We don't want to fly the airframes too much at the event, don't want to risk the freestyle planes much. So we pack those up, load them up in the van, and I do a couple demo flights with some other airframes. There's a 91-inch laser owned by Jean-Philippe Mayeux that I flew Sunday morning at Wings Over Europe, and I also got some time on the Peregrine, and had a great day, great afternoon, morning to cap off Wings Over Europe 2022. Said our goodbyes and had a beautiful drive to France. Went through Luxembourg, went through a lot of France, obviously, since we're coming from Belgium all the way down to Lyon. We got into Lyon Sunday evening, met up with Sebastian for the first time. Just as nice of a guy as I had seen from talking to him over WhatsApp. So met up with him, got settled in the apartment, and the plan was Monday morning, Ben and I would be heading to the site of FXFC to start getting some practice in and getting used to the field. So Monday morning comes around, we head out to the field. We're the first ones there that day. Get the airplanes out, clean them up. This is the first time I put my graphics on them. Got them ready to go. We met up with Harel and Yaron Koriat, another guy that was competing in FXFC, came all the way from Israel. It was great to see those guys again, and got the great week underway. Got some flying in on Monday. Met Clement Corday there at the field. Awesome guy. Unfortunately, he had a little bit of bad luck throughout the week, but rallied to have a great showing at FXFC, so hats off to him. But from our side, Monday went pretty well. Got used to the field a little bit. It was a little windy, which was good for freestyle practice. Flew the routines. and it was a long day, but it was also Harel Coriat's birthday. So Monday night we went into downtown Lyon and had an awesome dinner with Harel, Yaron, the rest of their family, Clement, and just an awesome experience to get out of the busyness, as you'd say, a little bit, and hang out with some friends a little bit and have a great dinner. With that being said, it was a late night, so Tuesday morning was a little rough. Not a lot of sleep Monday night, and that field presents a challenge a little bit where FXFC is held with a sunrise early morning right in your face. So I wanted to get out there at a decent time where contest flying would be taking place to get some valuable practice in and get used to flying in that sunrise. So Tuesday went pretty well for the most part. Got a lot of flying in. I think that day was the day that we flew the most. We got out there at the field probably around 6:30, 7 a.m. and flew basically all the way till we couldn't, till they shut off gas flying like at 8:30 p.m. So for the most part, Tuesday was fairly successful. Tuesday was the day that we tested smoke out for the first time. And so we got the smoke dialed in on the NG and laser, both airplanes just pumping with smoke. The NG smoke testing went off without a hitch. Laser smoke testing, I think I did 2 flights, and holy smokes, pumped the smoke out, not an issue at all. Had to dial them down a little bit because it was just coating the airplane, and didn't really make sense just to coat it when the presentation of the smoke would be the same if I just dialed it down a little bit. So it's all part of smoke testing, but that went well. And a couple flights later, I'm flying the 104 laser, and decide no smoke is going to be flown here during this flight, but go to fire it up on the runway, running it up a little bit, bring it back down to idle, and it slowly drops RPM all the way till the engine shuts off. And at that time it was middle afternoon, so the temp had rised a little bit. It was fairly hot that week, but the temperature would vary quite a bit from morning to afternoon. So adjusted the needles a little bit because it was a new engine still that we had broken the weekend or just a few days before at Wings Over Europe. So richened it up a little bit on the low end, just a hair. Still did the same thing. So we brought it back. We found out that a smoke line from the exhaust had come off and coated the inside of the airframe with smoke oil, inside of the cowl, everywhere, and the engine had taken some additional smoke oil that it shouldn't have. And so at that point I figured that the engine was pretty much beyond repair of what we could do on site, especially after we had already cleaned out the carburetor, changed fuel line, and it was still doing the same thing, and changed the tune drastically, and it was still doing the same thing, running rough down low and then shutting it off at idle. So it's a good thing that we purchased that DA120 from Burt at Wings Over Europe, because we swapped engines. Shout out to my dad, who I contacted during the process to let him know what was going on, to get his thoughts. And then also shout out to the guys at DA who was in communication with my dad during that evening, and basically was able to diagnose it over the phone. So we swapped out the engine, put the new engine in, test fired it on the ground. This was probably around 8:30 p.m. so we couldn't fly it, couldn't start the break-in process, but we test fired it on the ground. It ran, didn't shut off at idle, got a bass tune in it, and it was ready to go. Wednesday morning came around. Wednesday morning the FXFC facility was shut down because the organizers were setting it up, putting banners, flags, cutting the grass, I believe, that sort of thing. So most of the morning and afternoon, the FXFC field was going to be shut down. Another shout out to Sebastian. He hooked us up with a flying field about 45 minutes north of Lyon that we could head to for Wednesday in the morning to break in the engine on the laser. We get to that alternative field Wednesday. A lot of awesome people there that fly at that club. They're really welcoming, and they let us get some break-in flights on the laser. Took it up 3 to 4 easy flights we had all day, so I could take my time breaking in that engine. We obviously got the smoke line back hooked up, and once the engine was broken, it was a good idea to test the smoke again. That went off without any issues at all. The Holy Smoke pump was still working flawlessly. Pumped some smoke through it, flew the routines, smoke tested the NG and the laser, and then we had an awesome lunch there provided by the people at the club. Amazing food that was brought in, home cooked, French cuisine. So awesome experience at the club field, and a nice little break from a busy practice week. It was really refreshing, but still really productive at the same time. So we left that club Wednesday afternoon, headed back 45 minutes south to Lyon, and we decided to call it an early night. We went out and got some dinner with Sebastian and his 2 sons, Charles and Jules. Got some sleep Wednesday night, caught up on some sleep that we missed out on Monday and Tuesday night, and we were ready for the final practice day Thursday before round 1 Friday morning at FXFC. So we wanted to get out Thursday morning pretty early, get some practice flights in when the sun was in your face. So we did that, and at that time pretty much all the competitors were there for Thursday, coming in, setting up camp, setting up their tents, getting the airplanes dialed in, test flying, so on. So got to meet a lot of awesome people. Even though there was 39 pilots, the line and progression of practice flights still went on fairly smoothly. Everyone got to fly, reasonably few times. I think I flew probably 4, 5, 6 times, even with all those guys there. So it was a really productive day. It was awesome to see all the different airframes and flying styles, and like I said, meet everyone. Some really nice people, and it was really cool to see the competition start to come alive, and see some of the really high quality flying on Thursday. So the pilot briefing was Thursday late afternoon, early evening. The judges showed up. Chief judge showed up, had the briefing, went over the rules, the criteria, that sort of thing. Then we moved into the calibration flights. 5 or 6 pilots volunteered their time to go up and fly their 4-minute freestyles, and that was both for pilots, judges, organizers, just to get the function of the freestyle contest going. Got the music sorted out. The judges got warmed up a little bit to kind of calibrate what they're looking for, and those pilots were able to get a pretty good calibration flight in as well. So Friday morning, FXFC 2022 officially kicked off. First flight was at 7:30 a.m. I believe. Luca Bowman was the first pilot up. Flew really well, and some really high quality flying round 1. I think round 1 went off fairly well. No severe issues for anyone. A couple people, some bad luck mechanically, I believe, if I recall, but nothing that held them back from having a successful round 2, 3, 4 flight. So the way that the format worked was Friday and Saturday would be 2 flights. So Friday and Saturday, 4 rounds total, and it's basically qualifying Friday and Saturday. Sunday morning, it would go from 39 pilots to 20 pilots, and 20 pilots Sunday morning flew 2 times. And those 20 pilots cut from 20 to 10, and those 10 pilots would fly 1 flight Sunday afternoon, the final round, and all the scores would go back to 0 for that flight. So not a lot of high pressure Friday and Saturday. The goal was to get into the top 20 for everyone so that they could fly on Sunday. So on Friday, I flew the extra NG, and I flew 2 separate freestyle routines Friday, both scoring fairly close and both scoring in second position. Round 1, I believe I scored a 998, and round 2, I believe I scored a 994. So really close, which was great to see, you know, after all summer long of, you know, wondering what the judges were looking for from a flying perspective, from a routine perspective. It was cool to see that right out of the gate we were up there in contention and being that close to first place. I mean, really, we were 1.4 normalized points out of first place in the first round of FXFC, which was it really gave a boost of confidence going forward the rest of the contest, with so many unique flying styles over there and so many great pilots and a different taste of judging, so to speak. So that was really a relief, and like I said, gave a good boost of confidence going in. With that being said, you know, you're always looking to improve, always looking for you know, what can be done the next flight to one up what you did the previous round. So the only thing that I thought of that would give a big advantage was to add some special effects, since special effects was part of the criteria, and that was something that we were kind of lacking on. Obviously, the other criteria, there's always room for improvement. You can always fly cleaner, you can always fly more precise, you can always be a little bit more to the music. So I still wanted to focus on getting cleaner and cleaner each flight. But with that being said, the biggest improvement I believe that I could have done was with the special effects. Friday rounds 1 and 2, I was running engine smoke, standard exhaust smoke coming out of the mufflers. A lot of other pilots were running wingtip smoke, landing gear smoke, streamers, that sort of thing, and it was proven, you know, by the event organizers that obviously, since special effects is part of the criteria, if you're running those sorts of things, you'll get a higher score. And each individual special effect you would run, it would bring your score up a little bit. So with that being said, we're scoring 998s, 994s. For those of you that don't know, normally in a freestyle contest, you'll get a list of criteria, and each criteria will be numbered by a K factor. For example, if you have one criteria that's 40K and then another criteria that's 30K, that 40K criteria will have a heavier weight in the final round score of that flight. So the overall score that you get from that flight is called a K'd score. That is those judges' values multiplied by that K score of each criteria, and then combined to get a K'd score of the round. When you have 6 judges and 5 different criteria, that gives a pretty high score. I mean, we're talking, I think K'd scores were around 14,000, 15,000, something like that. So that's the actual score from the judge's sheet combined with the criteria that you get. So when you see a freestyle scoring list and someone gets 1,000, that doesn't mean that they had a perfect score and received 10s across the board. That just means they had the highest K'd score for that round, and that is called a normalized score because they normalize everyone to the highest scored flight, which is automatically set to 1,000. So when I say I got a 998 and 994, that was the normalized gap to the 1,000. And I think in K'd value, it was probably, if I recall, 20 to 40 K'd points, where normalized it was 1.4 points. So normalized is just an easier way to show where everyone is ranked to first place, and it's easier to read instead of a massive number like 14,000. So when we're that close, back to the special effects, I figured out, well, we came this far, we're scoring 998s, 994s. It would be a shame to close out the contest with 990s every round. So I kind of wanted to throw everything at it. We came this far, had a lot of difficulties, a lot of learning experiences the previous week and a half. You know, what's another one like this? You know, we're going all out at it. Had an engine swap, put the wrong fuel in the van, had a few other things come up. Difficulties was charging batteries throughout the practice week. So, I mean, hey, special effects, hey, we can do it. So it's Friday evening after rounds 1 and 2. We get that 998 and 994. We're second place overall. And I tell Ben, let's figure out a way to have a plan to where we can apply some special effects to the airframe if we need to. I at least wanted a plan, have everything sorted out to where when that final decision was made, we could go ahead and do it. At this time, I wasn't 100% sure, but I wanted to organize it to where I felt like I needed to, that we could get it done. Saturday morning, we get to FXFC really early. We talked to a few different people. I go and talk to Jean-Philippe, who was helping out Sylvain Bassini from Switzerland, another competitor at FXFC. He ran wingtip smoke, some awesome setups that he had on his airframe, and he was scoring really well with those special effects. So I talked to Jean-Philippe, awesome guy. He offered to help us out if we need to with smoke canisters, smoke setup, that sort of thing. So we were able to take that info and put it in the bank, so to speak. And I also talked to Rory Tooley, who came over from the UK. Shout out to him, flew awesome in the contest, and also was willing to help out with this special effects quest. He graciously donated some mounts if we needed it. He tested some canisters, I believe, on the landing gear. He wasn't too happy with the feel of the airframe, so he decided to ditch that plan, so he had some parts left over from that experiment. Lastly, we get in contact with the German team who came and participated in FXFC. Luca Bowman was running a setup on his 104-inch extra NG that had wingtip smoke, and talked to him, Dominic, Leon, Max, Dennis, and then all the rest of the German team, and they're more than happy, super nice guys to help us get on with a wingtip setup. I did consider the landing gear smoke setup, but the problem with that, I was worried that the axial rolling would get thrown off with the canisters mounted down there on the landing gear, and also with the wingtip smoke, I believe the presentation would score a little bit higher because I was still planning on using the standard engine smoke and then the wingtip smoke, and I thought with that triple smoke effect, so to speak, that it would present better. Plus we could run red, white, and blue. So thanks to the German guys, they had some smoke canisters that we were able to use. So Saturday morning, round 1, I go and I fly the 104-inch laser for the first time as sort of an experiment. I flew the NG the previous day, and I flew the laser Saturday morning. In round 3, no wingtip smoke, just standard engine smoke, fly the routine. I think I scored 983, but the CADE score is right on par with what I was doing yesterday, or that would have been Friday. CADE score is right on par. Sasha Sacconi had a really good flight, round 3, Saturday morning, so I figured that normalized score difference from dropping 10 points normalized from the day before wasn't something to get too worried about. So I decide to go with the laser for the rest of the contest since both airframes were scoring pretty much on par. So immediately after round 3, Ben takes the laser back to the German camp and doesn't even clean the smoke oil off it, and German guys go to work. Pull the wings off. I'm working with Luca on getting the radio setup going from the switch inside the fuse. He flies Spectrum, flies the IX-20, so he was a big help with that. We were able to set it up identically to his setup on his NG. Dominic and Max and Leon, a couple other guys, and Ben get to work on the wing wiring and the wing smoke mounting. That was a little bit of a work, but with all those awesome guys helping out, we got it done in no time, and with time to spare for round 4. So we get the wings wired, had to pull all the servos out in the wings to wire them, mounted the wingtip smoke mounts, got the canisters mounted, had to mount a little 2S battery inside the fuse, and the ignition switch had a LED. So we tested that, LED fired up on the radio, we were ready to go. I mean, we were probably had an hour and a half to spare until I was up to fly around 4. And every minute of it, I think I was going over that airframe. Ben and I were looking at every connection on the wingtips, just seeing if we were missing anything. So the plan was, when we had that wingtip smoke setup, that basically how it would work was, right before I was going to fly, we would leave the actual ignition plug out of the ignition switch. The LED was plugged in and the battery was plugged in. I would turn on the airframe, turn on the receiver, test the LED with the radio. The LED would light up, turn the LED off to show that, you know, it was off, obviously, then plug in the ignition port on the ignition switch, and that would essentially arm the wingtip smoke while the airframe was on. So the next time I would flip that switch is when the wingtip smoke would light. So we had the wingtip smoke set up on the airframe. Nothing else was changed, but with that being said, a lot of weight was being added to the airframe. So I figured it would kind of affect the flying a little bit. Snap rolls, point rolls, I really didn't know what to expect. Obviously there's some weight on the wingtips, so snaps and points had to have been affected, right? So I go, and my plan was in round 4 to fly a routine that I was fairly comfortable with. So I chose to fly that routine and see how it would go. You know, I was fairly comfortable with that routine, so if I had to make adjustments, that was probably the routine to choose, and it would be the routine that would best give me a feel of the airframe. So round 4 comes around, it's time to test everything out and see how it goes. At that point, it's still qualifying, so I didn't have a lot of pressure. The main goal was just to see how much more of a points increase this added special effect was going to do with the final round score. So round 4, final qualification flight. Since there was added weight to the airframe, with the wingtip smoke, I decided to take a little bit of extra time on warm-up, do a couple extra snaps, a couple extra small maneuvers that I thought that might affect the feeling of the airframe with the added canisters and mounts that were in the routine later on in the flight. Fortunately, we had a window of 6 total minutes flight time for each participant at FXFC each flight. So you had a 4-minute freestyle and then 2 minutes to take off, get trimmed out, warmed up, and also to come in and land. So 2 minutes for that stuff, so I could add an extra 30 seconds to warm up a little bit. So I went ahead and did that. I took off, first snap, a little off, as you'd expect. Next snap, a little off. Third snap, a little off. But at that point, you know, I started to feel out a little bit. The biggest thing was the total weight and mass of the airframe was different. Not just the wingtips, it was a little down on power, did a few other maneuvers, and yeah, at that point, I kind of had an idea what I was in for, but the same time, I was still pleasantly surprised because I was confident that I could make up for it, and that the more I'd fly it, the more I'd get used to it, you know. So went ahead and started with the routine, got into the routine, and the first snap, I hit it pretty good. So those missed snaps and warm-ups were perfectly planned out, and first couple snaps were fairly close. First minute of the routine, not a lot of mistakes, but it wasn't perfect. A few elevation and line differences, but that was pretty much it. And by the time the wingtip smoke turned on, the German guys behind me could hear them go crazy. And then from there on out, the rest of the flight was just an electric feeling. Just the crowd going crazy. All the guys who helped work on the airframe in the back, really supportive. You know, the air horns going off. You know, the typical European freestyle thing. And by the time the flight was over, felt pretty happy with it, and felt like that we were able to get a good reading on the adjustments that we had made going into the semifinals the next day. So Saturday's over with. Decide to relax a little bit, kick back, hang out at the field, chill with some friends a little bit, slowly pack up, and headed back to the hotel. And got back Saturday night, and it was pretty late until the scores and the top 20 were announced for Sunday morning. And it came back that we happened to win round 4, the final qualification flight. We were able to pick up 1,000 there. So huge boost of confidence going into Sunday, to say the least, given that the 1,000 was picked up first flight with wingtip smoke. So good news. But with that being said, we re-gear and focus on Sunday morning, the 2 semifinal flights. Sunday, awesome conditions for a freestyle contest, especially being the last day. You know, you always want to have, when the stakes are high, you want everyone to be flying at their A game, top of their level, and the conditions allowed for that. Not a lot of wind, sunny, fairly warm, so perfect conditions really. So top 20 flew. You could already tell that the level had increased. People were bringing their A game. A few people added some special effects for Sunday morning, and it brought up their score. One of those guys was Wolfgang Krahofer, added some wingtip smoke for his Sunday morning semifinal flight, and the flight was really looking good. One of his best flights of the weekend, probably if not the best, and unfortunately tapped the ground with the elevator, unhinged the elevator of the airframe, and essentially lost pitch control of it. But hats off to him. He was able to Harrier it over, hover the airframe, and Harrier it in to a soft landing in the cornfield and get the airframe repaired. And I believe the German guys went over there and helped him with that too. So another example of how kind and generous and how great competitors those guys are. So hats off to them. First 2 semifinal flights went well. We ran the wingtip smoke successfully. The system worked. And the crowd was just as crazy, if not crazier, than the final qualifying flight. Such a good feeling, you know, with so much support up there flying, and that was super, just made it comfortable, you know, with so many friends supporting you from back in the crowd. And I haven't had a feeling like that in any other RC flight I've done, and that's no exaggeration. Those are some memories that you know, that I'll never forget. Not just the fact that the flights were successful, but just I mean, being the fact that everyone was so happy and amped up and fired up for freestyle flying, and I mean that's just what it's all about. And and having all those friends in one spot, it was just awesome. So semifinals was a lot of fun. And with that being said, after those 2 semifinal flights, it was time to see the results of the top 10 and get ready for the final round flight. And turned out that we were able to 1,000 out the rounds 5 and 6, the 2 semifinal flights. So that put us in first place overall going into the final round. With that being said, the scores would obviously be reset to 0. So the only score that would matter for the final classification of the contest was round 7, the final round, the top 10 pilots. So yeah, the pressure was high. The nerves were up there. The anxiety was up there. You just know that everyone is going to be pulling out their best flight of the weekend, going to be laying it all out there, flying their best routines. You know, some extra special effects were added. We got the wingtip smoke equipped again, obviously, since we were having success. At that point, we hadn't lost a round since we put the wingtip smoke canisters on. And we also decided to add a little bit of streamer on each wingtip. The idea behind that was in hopes that we'd maybe even, just get an extra half a point at least for running streamers. And also with the streamers and the rules, since a lot of guys were running detachable streamer setups, if a streamer gets burnt off or comes off, then you won't 0 your flight because it's a streamer. However, if you lose a wingtip cartridge, covering, or other parts of your airframe, that you'll unfortunately 0 your flight. So not a lot of risk with running streamers unless they're too long. Unfortunately, some guys had them get caught up in servos, and that caused some issues. So that's why we kept the streamers nice and short, and in hopes that it would help out even just a little bit. The final flight, getting ready, getting into the zone, perfect conditions for a final round. Hardly any wind. Drew number 3, so third up in the pilot order. First up was Wolfgang. He went up, did an awesome flight, probably his best one of the weekend. He had wingtip smoke too. Went up round 3, and couldn't have been happier with how it went. Awesome crowd once again, just like semifinals. The laser performed awesome. One thing I do remember now, between the final semifinal flight and the final flight, we found out that all 4 engine bolts were coming loose, and the engine was actually moving around, causing the idle to change. Before the final semifinal flight, when we ran the engine up on the ground, before I took off, I had to run the trim all the way up just to keep it from dying, because the linkage setup was off a little bit with the engine moving around. So I ended up flying a full flight like that and got the airframe back, and I thought we were gonna have to do an engine swap because I thought something was going on and we didn't have a lot of time to diagnose the issue. However, we brought it to the German camp, of course. Awesome guys, donated their time to help out, and we were in the process of swapping the engines and noticed that all the bolts were loose. So in an effort to save time, bolted them back up, ran it, fixed the problem, was able to bring the throttle trim back down. So thankfully that wasn't a big issue. Could have been really bad, but it wasn't, and we caught it just in time. So final round, equipment was perfect, streamers mounted, wingtip smoke worked, just had to wait it out, and it was up to the judges. Some awesome flying the remainder of the round, and just waited it out, chilled around with some friends, and before we knew it, it was time for the awards. Some awesome sponsors stepped up for the event, obviously, for some donations, and the plaques that were done for the top 3 finishers were really high quality and well done. And so they come through all the pilots, and find out that we make it into the top 2. Remember, there's a level of uncertainty there because all the scores from the previous rounds were thrown out. The only score that remained for the final classification to contest was that final top 10 flight. So there was a bit of uncertainty, and so there's relief when we found out that we were still on par with all that we were doing the previous rounds when we made top 2. So Mattia Zini finished 3rd place, first podium finisher, and top 2 was Sasha and I. So we came up and they revealed the winner of the contest, and obviously a huge relief, huge amount of excitement. The first thing I thought of was all the hard work that I put into it, that my family put into it, sponsors put into it, and all the memories came back of communication with everyone since late 2021 all the way to August of 2022 to make everything come together logistically. And yeah, just felt happy, obviously, for everyone that was involved, and just a huge relief for myself after all of the hard work. So just a fantastic feeling. And then after the awards, I was offered to do a celebration flight, so to speak, with the 104 laser. So I got it fueled and smoked up and went off and did that, and I think people really enjoyed it. Had a couple close calls with it, but it was a lot of fun. Sanded off a couple edges on the airframe, kind of made it look like my laser here at home. So it was a fun cap off to the event, and I think, like I said, I think the crowd really enjoyed the celebration flight for the people that were both there on site and the people that saw it online. So fun way to cap it off. And then it was time to pack up. Sebastian, the good friend that we had met, had graciously set up a meeting in Paris Monday with Christophe and Benoit Paysant-Leroux. Christophe, ever since I was a kid and watching RC flying and freestyle, he was a guy that I looked up to, a big inspiration, awesome pilot, huge name in RC, and this was going to be the first time that I was going to meet him. So, and same with Ben too, first time that he met him. So he was going to bring out his F3A planes, and we would have a meeting at a club in Paris. So at FXFC, we said our goodbyes to all the awesome friends that we met there, and all the people that put on the event, organizers, and said goodbye to the field that we were flying at for a whole week. So we headed to Paris. Sunday afternoon we were heading to Paris, and we stopped and refill the van and get some snacks and stuff, and we meet these guys at the gas station who are big fans. Somewhere in the middle of France, from Lyon to Paris, we meet these guys at the gas station, big fans. They had driven all the way from Normandy, which is in northern France, obviously, down to Lyon to watch FXFC, and they were nice enough people. They bought us some coffee and chatted a little bit. So we arrived to Paris Sunday night late at like 1 or 2 a.m. Got to a hotel. Monday morning, we headed to the club in Paris where we met Sebastian and his sons and Christophe, Benoit, and had an awesome day of flying. Exchanged airframes. Christophe flew the 104-inch laser, and I got to fly the Eureka, Christophe's insanely successful F3A plane. So an awesome experience, awesome guy, fantastic pilot. Got to see him fly some F3A sequences, really cool to watch. And huge shout out to that club too. They put on a lunch, and we enjoyed an awesome afternoon with those guys. And it was a great way to cap off the RC experience of the previous 2 weeks that included Wings Over Europe and FXFC Prep, the FXFC contest, and this was an awesome way to close out. And we had perfect weather for it too, so an awesome day overall. And that was on a Monday evening. Sebastian took us downtown Paris, Ben and I, and we toured around a little bit, saw some of the insanely popular monuments there, and it was a great way to kind of relax, get away from RC a little bit, and enjoy the fact that we were in Paris. Had an awesome dinner, Evening was amazing. Weather was perfect. Beautiful sunset in Paris. So had a really enjoyable dinner with those guys, and got rested up because Tuesday morning we were going to drive back to Aerobertics in Belgium, in Bruges. So we took the van Tuesday morning, arrived Tuesday afternoon into Belgium, packed up some things, dropped off the airframes to Aerobertics, said goodbye to Bert, and packed up our suitcases with some stuff, some souvenirs, and some other items that we had brought over, packed it up, ready to go back to the U.S. And Viken, the guy who originally picked us up at the airport, drove us back to Brussels. Huge thanks to him for all his time that he put in. And yeah, so we got to Brussels, the airport, had a super early flight Wednesday morning, and yeah, that concluded the 2 to 2.5 week trip of Wings Over Europe and FXFC. And yeah, just a fantastic experience, once in a lifetime type thing, really. Some memories that you just can't buy, you know, and that was made up with people that were extremely gracious. A lot of hard work put in by everyone, and I really hope that everyone feels extremely accomplished with the outcome of it. And I'm glad that I had the opportunity to have such a great experience. So in the near future, I will definitely be posting some flying videos. I believe I already posted one from Wings Over Europe. I'll post more, and then the flying videos from FXFC as they come in. And keep an eye on social media. I'll keep posting some photos from the trip. And yeah, I'll close this video out with some photos, some miscellaneous photos from the event, maybe some flying clips, but most of the flying video will be highlighted in other videos. So thanks for sticking in there to watch this whole video out. You know, I'm sure I missed out on a lot of great memories. If I didn't mention your name in there, you still had a big part in it. I mean, there's just countless people to mention. If I were to just list off everyone, it would probably take up the duration of this video. So stay tuned for updates, flying videos, like I said. Thanks again for watching this video. And yeah, I mean, thank you so much to everyone who had a hand in this. And really just wanted to take this time to do this video to highlight as much as possible that I could think off the top of my head. You know, none of this was scripted, just went at it and went at every detail that I could think of. So yeah, thanks for sticking it out and watching this. Be sure to subscribe if you haven't already. More videos like this I plan to do in the near future, especially, as you may have noticed, since we're in the new shop, I'd like to do another shop video of the new shop here in Louisiana. So stay tuned. Thanks for watching, and subscribe if you haven't already.